Hi, my name is Paul Slackus. This is Good News Broadcast. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in once again. Today's a symbolic day, I think, worldwide, by far here for people in America, but it permeates throughout the world. It's 9/11. And 9/11, I think, for so many, has been a day that we remember the people that here in America passed, but we also remember, I think, loved ones overall and in general. And today we're going to be speaking about a wonderful book, actually, that talks about mother-daughter relationship and about life overall in general. So we're very excited about that. I do want to also mention, sort of like on the other side of what 9/11 is, but it is called the Peace Vigil. And the United Nations on September 21st declared unanimously, 7 years ago, International Peace Day. And good news, as many of you know, has been involved since that inception by the United Nations in creating a concert. We have been doing it in Central Park in the band shell for 7 years, and now this coming Sunday, the 14th, we moved to Prospect Park in Brooklyn, and we have a full day's worth of sort of remembrance. The day on September 21st is for ceasefire, but every day should be a ceasefire day. So we welcome you to come on down. So thank you for tuning in, and we're going to go immediately now to our guests. We have, and good friends, actually. So we have, I think I'm going to introduce Judith West. Hello, Judith.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having us on.
And many of you know Judith by watching Good News Broadcast, because Judith is a star, and more importantly, has always wonderful information to share with us and with our audience with her show Getting Her Money's Worth. Now, sitting next to Judith is her lovely daughter, correct?
Yes.
And her name is Lynn Biederman, right?
Yes, that's right.
Hello, Lynn.
Hi,
welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for agreeing to come here with your mother today and to talk actually about a book your first book,
Yes.
I believe, that you've created, and it's called Unraveling with Michelle Baldini and Lynn Biederman, right?
Right.
Yay!
Yay!
So this is an exciting moment
Yes.
for a smart thing is to prepare for the unexpected. Okay, so well, I sort of knew that you guys were coming. I did get a book ahead, and then it's a very interesting book. So let's start off first on what is the book about, Lynn?
In short order, the book is about a toxic mother-daughter relationship, and essentially how that affects the choices that the 15-year-old protagonist, Amanda, makes in her life.
Okay. And it's, is this a true story?
It's there's a lot of it is based on truth. I mean, I have a co-author, so actually our joke was if anything came up uncomfortable, we would always just say, oh, well, that was from her life. We would sort of both put it on each other. But I think like a lot of debut novelists, certainly it's infused with stuff from each of our own history. No question.
You start the book. Well, let's start it off in a nice way, because in essence, the books sometimes are started with a dedication.
Yes.
And you have dedication.
Yes.
Both of you have a dedication.
Yes.
So your dedication here says, to my mother, Judith West Edelman, who always says, even spots can become stripes. Okay, it's hard to say who held the baton out first. But I'm so grateful that we are each holding on to an end.
Yes.
Okay. So well, Judith, tell me what that quote means to you, and what do you mean by spots and stripes?
Well, because listen, you're the one that developed Good News, and part of Good News is to always have hope that there can be behavior change, and particularly in family relationships. Family relations have a way of becoming dysfunctional, and the ability to change behavior at any age is what I say. Spots can become stripes if people work on that behavior change. So that piece, I guess, came about as a result of my belief that people can cure their family ills and become a harmonious family.
Tell me about.
So, I mean, that's good news, isn't it?
That's good news. By far, it's good news. It's always if you all. It sounds to me like you're both holding the baton now.
That's
I
exactly
guess it's
right.
a now. So
right.
So So to help the audience, and maybe the book does that as well, what was happening that probably kept you maybe a little bit more apart? What were some of the things that you think that, and you're not the only, I once interviewed a psychologist, and she said, I don't know any functional families. Every family is dysfunctional of some sort.
Right.
And, who
That's
knows?
like Tolstoy, every family is unhappy in its own unique way.
Yeah, this is just part
Right.
of life. My own,
Yeah.
I've
Right.
been in families. I've had mother-daughter
Right.
in two situations in
Right.
my life, married to women, and myself. It's not easy to raise a family, is it?
I think if I could just, if I could just answer maybe for a second first, I think that at least in terms of the book, which actually the best part about it is that it did bring us closer. It's why the book is dedicated to my mom. But I think one of the things was that in the book itself, originally, some pieces of the mother character my editor felt were like too harsh, maybe not even credible. And in doing the process of writing the fiction, it sort of changed the fact between us, because I had to sort of look at that character and decide where I could find ways to soften the character. And once I started to think about compassion, I think, although my mom might say she was first, I think I began to develop as an adult more compassion for what she'd been through in her life. And once the window was just sort of jarred open a tiny bit, I think it began a cycle of understanding. And for some reason, we had a relationship built on a lot less understanding. And then all of a sudden, when the understanding came alive, it's what changed the tide, I would say.
Okay, so you at a later point in your life, when you started to really think about your relationship with your mom, your relationship with yourself.
Right.
You also, aren't you a mother as well?
I am.
Okay.
And I have a daughter as well.
Okay, and so now you've matured since
I
a young 15-year-old or a young little girl.
Right.
Right? And now you're taking some time to investigate what happened in your life.
Exactly. And I also, that's just an added element. I also could see things with that other hat on. All of a sudden, I'm the mother, not the daughter. And so it calls into question all these stories that you have set up in your mind. So instead of, just when you're a teen and you're growing up, you make the story and then you find every piece of evidence to support your story. Now all of a sudden you change your role, you're the mother of a teenage daughter, and all of a sudden you have to go back and reevaluate the story that's been in your mind for so long. Even if the tape is wrong, the tape was playing.
You have a teenage daughter?
I do.
Come on.
She looks like a teenager herself, right?
I do. Yeah, I do.
All right, so Mom, who's affectionately called Captain, I think, in the book.
Actually, my husband calls me General, so I guess that's a demotion. That's a demotion.
That's funny.
Was she a good girl? Is she a good daughter? Is she?
Yeah.
Was she? Is she? And what do you think for the future?
Yeah. Well, I tell Lynn straight off that with new vision, both literally and figuratively, she's a different kind. Certainly, I say better mom than I am. I don't know. It's certainly a different kind. For one thing, we grew up. I grew up in an era where whatever happened in your background, Paul, what that was then, and if you were a functioning adult, you were stoic about it and didn't dwell on it and didn't talk about it. And I did. I came from a very dysfunctional family myself. And probably I never learned, the best place to learn is around the kitchen table. Well, I don't even remember ever sitting around the kitchen table with my parents. Right. So I really never learned how a family ought to function. I didn't know. And I suppose I was very ignorant in that regard and didn't appreciate it. And then, of course, also, I worked when that was really important to me. I felt that I had no identity if I didn't. For me, my identity didn't want to be a stay-at-home. I wanted to go out there and work. And frankly, at the time that I was doing it, we needed to do it. We needed the two incomes. So I suppose I kind of ignored more than anything else, maybe, the mother role. I'm sorry now, but when you're doing things, you don't have the benefit of hindsight.
Did you have, how many children did you have?
I have
Just
two.
two?
Lynn is the younger. I have a son too. I have to say this. I had a mother-in-law around. That's one of the things that happens in families today. The extended family's not around that much. I had a mother-in-law, a grandmother that was that filled in a lot and was very loving. And I suppose, not consciously but unconsciously, I sort of abdicated some of the mother role to my mother-in-law, to the grandmother.
And you also had some fundamental beliefs that are different
And
now
I
for a lot
had
of
some-
people. You
and I had
believe a
some-
mother should not be friends with
Yeah,
her daughter.
and
That's a fundamental shift in the culture now.
Right. But I have to say, I'm not going to go so far as to say that I believe that parents should be friends. I think that there is a proper parent role, a proper friend role. But certainly my position on commingling, those roles, like commingling, has softened.
Oh, okay.
Has softened. It bothers me a little bit when I hear the word toxic, because toxic to me really sounds poisonous. And I wouldn't want to think that our relationship was poisonous. I really don't.
Well, the story's not. When I say that's
yeah.
what the story's about,
I know,
the captain is not.
Right.
It's
but
okay.
but
we
on
didn't
the
even
other
get into
hand,
we didn't even start off like what is the story yet.
Right.
But this is so. In essence, it is. Well, let's talk about the story, and let's talk about. I mean, there seems to be some family situations that may be in the book, I guess, of sorts. Okay, I don't sense that this was written to get everything out about your family.
No,
by
no,
any
this
means.
was not like my
Like
memoir.
your memoir
of,
saying,
no. This is not a story of saga.
Yeah.
It's just a story. It's just a story to open eyes up to mothers and daughters. Just about the power of that relationship and how it influences choices. It's from a teen perspective, but how it influences choices. It's not really different from other relationships, except for the fact that I think so much is dictated in our lives as we get older, from young to old, on the relationship. I mean, I know that in the story itself, the 15-year-old Amanda, she feels like she's a mistake because she's a product of a teenage pregnancy. So she feels like she's a mistake. She feels like she's unwanted. Her mom, she reads emails secretly that her mother writes to her best friend, how all she's trying to do, all the frictions related to her trying to keep her daughter from repeating the same mistakes. She intuits from that she is in fact a mistake, feels unwanted, wants to fill the void, and she runs, ironically, right into the hands of Boys for Acceptance, the very thing her mother's sort of trying to prevent. So I think that there's a lot of things about this story that apply to how we are as people. We're constantly seeking out, even in our relationships, we go back to history. We want to close the circle of what doesn't work. We rail against history repeating itself. My story is a story about hope for healing. We had that happen to us. We could have had the cycle repeat itself. My mother did not have a relationship with her mother that was anything she'd want to have with me. Ours wasn't the way we wanted. I feel like we broke the cycle. I hope that I can work things out with my daughter, and that will fill in the same way. So
it's all good.
It's all good.
If I could add, I think just to add on, Lynn, I think the key to this behavior change, stripes becoming spots or spots becoming stripes, is indeed to break the legacy of a dysfunctional family.
And because it's 9/11, hope. Which I have to say, I mean, I think hope for change, whether we're talking politics today, or just talking healing from people, 9/11 families, or healing your important relationships. That to me is the most important thing, and actually, that was taken from my own, not from growing up, but my first job out of law school was as a litigator for child abuse and child neglect in Manhattan Family Court, and the one thing that was pervasive there, and among all the families there, was a total lack of hope. And I felt like anything that I wrote, I wanted it to have that element. And then I think when you begin to believe it and write it, it also just organically transferred to us.
Mm-hmm. Talking about, communications is a two-way street. And,
Indeed.
And if it's not, if you really want to communicate, both people have to be in it. I actually interviewed somebody who was renewing their vow on Valentine's Day, 50th vow renewal out in Gurney's Inn. And I asked them, I said, how did you two stay together? What's the secret kind of thing?
Yeah.
So they said to me, I'll tell you, it's our communications. We've found in our home a place that whenever we wouldn't be communicating well, we would physically go to, and it was the kitchen table, as you mentioned a little earlier.
Nice.
We would go to the kitchen table, and we would sit down, and we'd start our conversation. We would either agree to agree, or we'd agree to disagree. And that, in her home, was the solution to their
safe harbor.
That's a good. That's a good
isn't that an
suggestion.
amazing?
Were either of them psychiatrists, or they just came up with this on their own?
This was 50 years. See, they are no psychiatrists. This was their saving place.
This was their safe harbor.
A safe harbor. So I guess we all don't have to agree with each other. We don't have to, and that's you talk about that, right?
Right, I do. Obviously, if in my story, if 15-year-old Amanda felt like she could go to her mother and talk to her mother, there's a pivotal piece in the book where she's offered a deal by a popular high school senior boy, and the deal is a date to this homecoming dance, which she thinks the popularity will fix all her problems, the void at home and everything else. And the deal is date to the dance in exchange for your virginity. So she faces this, very important, significant decision, and she doesn't have the outlet of the communication with her mom. So basically, either way she makes this choice or this decision, it automatically creates a distance, a bigger distance between her and her mom.
But it's a big issue.
Yeah, yeah. And
this is no small issue at
it's
15 years old.
No, but it's also real life. This is it's real, true. And the issues I've spoken to groups of mothers and daughters, and that's this issue for this book. But ultimately, you're not going to find any mom or any daughter who doesn't have some kind of issue that weighed on them heavily, that weighed on their heart, that they felt like, I wish I had gone to my mother. And sometimes the mother's available, but just because you think she's not available, there's a blame that gets set on the mother because you felt like you couldn't go to her. Mm-hmm. So it becomes its own self-fulfilling prophecy as well.
Sure.
It's not easy.
That's not. Look, I'm a father, and
it's not easy
so
on that either.
My daughter's 30, and now I'm a grandfather, and all the good things I have also, like you do, Judith. And it's not easy in the family setting by any means.
Right.
Certain issues are more difficult to deal with. Would I go to my mother in that scenario that you just spoke about?
Right.
I don't know. It's a real tough one. And
that just represented the biggest situation she didn't go to her about. But
and did I read that there was some pregnancy, or was there some kind of result?
Well, the 15-year-old she thought she could get pregnant, but the 15-year-old was herself a product of her mom's teenage pregnancy. So she also defines her life, but by what she thinks her mother lost. That her mother married the man maybe she didn't want to marry because she was pregnant with her. That her mother didn't have the career she might have wanted to have. So she sorts of defines her life by what she perceives her mom thinks of her, which is, I think, a very common misperception as well.
What are some of the good ways you think to be able to have a happy home?
I think you pointed out some of them already. Communication is obviously one of them. I kind of like your communication room, and I might transport that into my house. But I think that's one, and I think I didn't let my mom read the book before it came out, and actually she kept asking me for a copy, and I don't know why she believed me. I kept telling her, it's Random House, Mom, but you would not believe how there's no extra copies. So I didn't give it to her because I was afraid of what she'd think. But what she said, I think, is maybe the most poignant answer that I could give to your question. And she wrote me an email the day after she got it from Amazon, like anyone else who'd ordered it, and she said, I think I've learned something from you. That motherhood is not about being perfect, it's just about being there. So that would be my answer to you, that it really isn't about being perfect, but being there, and I think having your communication room are two good steps. And a nice dose of hope.
Judith, since I know you and since we've worked on lots of shows and for some time now, you have I will say, a very strong personality. You are... You're a very smart person. You're very kind. I like
Well,
you a
that
lot.
general didn't come from nowhere, Paul.
You know, you
Right.
you have a lot of great features, and you're a straight shooting person,
That's true.
extraordinaire. Okay, which is why I'm crazy about working with you
Thanks, Paul.
and offering help for me. So I could just almost picture, to be frank with you, I could almost picture being, I'm not your son, but I could picture what it would be like to be, because I don't know if you are much different here than you might have been at home, because if you believe something, you're gonna go for it, and you're gonna share it.
I'm not a two. As a matter of fact, I used to work for the man I used to work for, who was a icon in his field, always said that it's rare the person that has two sides. The way the person behaves in the business world is very similar to the way the person behaves in their own personal life. And, you know, when I think about it, maybe I am difficult to be around. Not that I go out of my way to be difficult, but perhaps only because maybe I seem, as Lynn said at times, to be impenetrable, not approachable. And,
But you've also changed a
but
lot.
I've changed a lot.
So-
I listen. You know, even smart people make mistakes, Paul. You know.
We all make mistakes.
Right. You know, maybe I grew up with a. It's true. You know, you can't go beyond. You can't forget those roots that you had when you're 4 and 5. That
Right.
piece of your life, it stays with you, and that's why I talk about change. And I never had a chance to be a kid. I always had to. Every day was about surviving, and I suppose I adopted that whole kind of MO as my MO. But now I realize that you can be strong and be respected. I suppose that's the right word, respected, and still be wrong. And the other thing is, it's not a terrible thing to say, hey, on that judgment or on that day, maybe I was wrong. And if I was, I'm sorry. There's 2 magic words. I'm sorry.
Right. I think you're just a lot more, I just think you're much more open than, I mean, I think, look, everybody progresses in life, and so sometimes you like pick up bigger weaknesses, and sometimes you get different strengths. And I think like as a strength, at least from my side, I feel like you're much more open, that you're open to hearing criticism, you're open to hearing suggestions, and you're open to changing for the benefit of the greater good, the relationship or yourself.
And then, of course,
And a lot of people aren't like that. A lot of people, as they get older, get more adamant in their, everything about themselves and more definitive. Like, that's the way I do it, and that's how it's going to be done. I'm not saying you don't like it sometimes, but also you're willing to say, okay, maybe it won't happen my way. And that is why we can relate and
it's kind of
things work out.
It's a two-way street because
But you felt like it had to be your way back in the day.
Yeah. And then Lynn, I will say, to Lynn's credit, even when I felt if I was saying something and there would be a firewall, sometimes she would come back the next day or the day after and say, I thought about what you said, Mom, and there's a piece of what you said that's right. Every right, if one right is good, 2 rights are better. Every right has a piece of it that's right-er, or maybe equally as valid right. And as that kind of comeback would begin to foster, it created a willingness in me to be more open about what I wanted to say.